Well, we are live. Today's comments are on YSL trial. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. We have a lot to talk about today. Goodness. The state rested, yes, but not before Detective Vivarito completely imploded on the stand. It was wild. Was absolutely wild. Max Sharp on cross just grilled her like a steak on a hibachi with no oil. She argued with him about stuff. It just was, hey, Gap Girl, wasn't this afternoon wild? I think there were so many highlights. The best was when Max grilled Vivarito. It was just like, is she really saying that? Is she really this dumb? Like, hey, Kat, I couldn't get over how Vivarito proved Max's point, proved that Shannon was not the shooter of drinks because the medical examiner said that the bullet hit drinks in the back of the head at the base of the skull. That means the bullet could not possibly have come from the side. It came from the back. And showing the third car pull up behind and to the side means the third car was the shooter. And Hilton just going on and on and on about how the car had to be right next to it. And I kept saying, just sit down and shut up already. It's just crazy. And to think that this was their last witness. This was their worst witness. And it proved, at least in my mind, that the state, especially Hilton, is an incompetent lawyer because she kept going back and going back and going back at the same thing instead of readjusting and moving on. And then what Vivarito did to Kayla is unconscionable. And the judge should have allowed Doug to grill Vivarito about that because that was a threat to a to Shannon's wife. To walk up to a defendant's wife and say, that is the last time you will call me a hoe. That's a threat. And also, witnesses are not supposed to watch any other coverage of the trial they're going to witness about. Right. Her facade did not work at all. She was argumentative. She came across as vindictive. She was a terrible witness. Yeah, it wasn't right at all. And Doug should have been allowed to question her about that because it proves that she has a bias against one of the defendants. because that was a threat. Now, Whitaker may have not perceived it as a threat, but the fact that a body who's Mr. Arrogance wrote Kayla an email apologizing for it and saying that it will never happen again proves that Doug should have been allowed to question her about it. Proves it was a threat. Am I right in thinking that? And then, you know, another thing that got me is Doug has been working on a directed verdict motion since Friday. He talked about that on one of the streams over the weekend. And today, I think that when he submits his motion for directed verdict, I think he's going to get it from Whitaker, because Whitaker made the comment when Doug and Hilton were going back and forth. Whitaker made the comment, they haven't proven any aspects of the crime that your client is accused of, have they? And Doug said, I don't believe so. And then Hilton, true to form, started arguing, yes, they have. And Whitaker kind of laughed at her, like said, and kind of said, oh, really? And I thought, yeah, Whitaker doesn't believe that they have proved against Kendrick. Because otherwise, why would she tell Doug they haven't proven any of the crimes against your client? Why would she say that unless she was leaning towards his directed verdict? Am I right in thinking that, Gap Girl? It's just crazy. This whole trial has been crazy moments. Yes, Kat does an amazing job. You know, she does. She does absolutely amazing job. I've watched lawyers' channels that don't do as good a job as breaking stuff down as Kat does. And my aunt was secretary to the chairman of the board of Mayer Brown and Platt, the largest law firm in Chicago. So I've seen lawyers break stuff down, and Kat does a wonderful job. Vivarito is just so biased. I'm glad that she's done and over with. And I don't think that she should have been allowed to go non-camera, because this is the way I look at it. I have lawyers and cops in my family. The only person that's supposed to be, yeah, I'm not as good as Kat. I will admit that. The only person that is supposed to go undercover or non-camera is undercover or someone that can prove their life has been threatened. Vivarito said she doesn't want it, but she's on the first 48. She's on she's on the Fulton County website. Yeah, no one is as good as Kat. Kat has an amazing knack for, explaining things. You know, I do my rants. I call them. She calls it rant and dant, and I agree with that. And it's like, okay, so is the defense going to put on a case? Now, Doug said over the weekend that he had witnesses lined up. Yeah, Kat, we love you too. I've told you this before. You've done a lot for me, and I respect you, and I love you, and you're a friend. Um, Doug said was on Inside the Law with Phil Holloway, and he said he had case. No, not Inside the Law. It was Justice Served with Michael Bryant and Linda Kenny Bodden, and he said that he had witnesses that he could call, but because of the events of the last week, that he has decided not to call any witnesses, and that he's going to do directed verdict. And I don't know if Max is going to put on a case or not. I missed that part because my physical therapist came, and I also missed the part where John Floyd was talking. And I hope that they let a body do closing. He will literally put the jury to sleep. He did the closing in the Trump trial, and he stops and pauses like every 10 words. He'll say 10 words and he stops and pauses for like 10 or 15 seconds, then says another 10 and then stops and pauses. He was horrible at it. But then he went up against Ashley Merchant. Ashley Merchant is a rock star. She just gets on a point and she drives the point home, don't she? But it's hard to believe after 2 years that the state rested. See, right. That was really painful to watch. And I just kept saying, come on, spit it out, spit it out, spit it out. Come on, talk. You're up there to talk. You're a lawyer. Lawyers can talk, talk. It's like, oh man. But it's like after 2 years, it's hard to believe that this has come to this, and this should not have gone 2 years. It should have been, most trials like this are 4 to 6 weeks. But the fact that they started off with 250 witnesses, and Judge Glanville did not tell them, look, cut your witnesses. This is going on too long. Judge Glanville told the jurors that it would be 6 to 8 months, and here we are 2 years later. And something that was telling to me was Juror 56. When Juror 56 sent that letter to Whitaker, that told me, all right, you know, if this case does go on 3 months, it's going to be not guilty, because he said that he was ready to vote. How did he word it? Like opposite of the decision, against the decision. That's the way he worded it. And here we are. We're going to be over with probably in a week. But something else that was interesting today when they were doing the jury instructions, Whitaker was asking the defense how they wanted this worded, how they wanted that worded. And when Hilton would interject, Whitaker would say, well, we're not wording it like that. The state did not win very much from what I saw. Am I right on that? They did not win very much on jury instructions. And I missed out on John Floyd's whole segment. Yeah, me too. Yep, girl. I missed John Floyd's whole segment because I had surgery on my neck a month ago, and I have a visiting physical therapist that comes in. Yes, jury instructions are a huge issue for appeal is right. I think that if there is any guilty verdict, that is coming back on appeal, but right, because there is so much reversible error in this case, not from anything that Whitaker did, but stuff that Glanville did. The whole ex parte issue by itself is reversible error. The whole, and I know that she tried to correct the ex parte by having it with Kenneth Copeland in the courtroom and going through things, but that doesn't correct what Glanville did. The fact that he let Hilton and Love be in chambers with him with a sworn witness. Now, if he was not yet sworn, that would be different. With a sworn witness and basically threaten him and promise him that he would not be charged unless he admitted to the Donovan Thomas murder or he lied on the stand. I think that's a huge problem because in my mind, I think that little Woody, Kenneth Copeland, is the shooter of Donovan Thomas, that him and Threat did it. Because he testified on the stand that he didn't have to protect Threat anymore, that he was no longer with us. And he also said that he shot up Rich Homie Kwan's barbershop, which that's where the Donovan Thomas murder happened. Now the state can't charge him with that because they gave him immunity. You can't charge someone for something you gave them immunity for. They gave him, from the way I read it, they gave him blanket immunity. And they just stepped all over themselves. You know, he said through his lawyer that he was going to plead the fifth. They tried to get his lawyer disbarred. They went around, they're the ones that should be disbarred because they went around his lawyer and talked to him anyway. When he repeatedly told them I have a lawyer. That is a violation of judicial ethics. That's a violation. And I read this over the weekend that Miss Love has an appearance before the the JC. I forget what it is. Anyhow, it's the Judicial Conduct Board. She has an appointment with them for December the 5th. Now, I don't know if that's going to be streamed or anything. Usually they do that kind of stuff in secret and then hand them out a punishment in a letter months later. But this is all disturbing stuff. All the stuff that, you know, my aunt, her name was Janelle Hillier. She drilled into me, you respect lawyers, you respect judges, you respect courts. You may not agree with any one of them, but you do not disrespect them. And I think that if she's seen this trial, she would be rolling in her grave, because before she was the secretary to the chairman of the board, the lawyers would have their board meeting and the secretaries would come and sit in the lawyer's lap and kiss on them and all that stuff. She put a stop to that the first day. She told them, you will not disrespect him or her. They spent a lot of time going to school and passing the bar, and you will not disrespect them. You can do what you want away from the office, but you will not do that here. If I catch you again, you're fired. And that's where I got my training. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been to courts. I watch courts on TV, and from her explaining to me right and wrong in a court, that's where I get my opinions from. So, do you want us to talk about the Koberger trial? Do you think that'd be a good coverage, Gap Girl? Because I'm usually more towards the defense side, because I like to see, you know, defendants get a fair trial. But with the Koberger trial, his defense attorney is a complainer. She filed 13 motions yesterday to get all of the evidence removed from court. Dismissed, rather. She wanted all the evidence dismissed, and she filed 13 motions. To me, that's crazy. You asked for a change of venue and you got it. You asked for a new judge and you got it. And now you're going to sit here and tell the new judge that you want all the evidence dismissed. Crazy. And I've been following the Lake and Riley trial. I feel really, really sad. I did a live on it over the weekend. It breaks my heart. Really breaks my heart, because the prosecution on Friday talked about him hitting her in the head with a rock. He did not just hit her in the head with a rock. He hit her in the head with a rock 10 times. and they played the 911 call, and you can hear her struggling, and then you hear thud, 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 thud 10 times. And then he left his fingerprint on her phone because he hung up her phone. I had read some of the medical examiner's report. She fought for 18 minutes for her life. 18 minutes. That's it. To me, that says a lot. And then his name is Ibarra. His lawyer screwed him. His lawyer waived a jury trial. Which, in my mind, tells me his lawyer thinks he's guilty and just doesn't want him to get the death penalty. So waived the jury and got, well, I can't say it that way. She got the state to agree to waive a jury trial. But it's heartbreaking. She just went out for a run, and they showed camera footage on Friday of him stalking her, him following her, him being at specific places, and then you would see her run by, and then another place, and he would be there, and you would see her run by. That's stalking. And then they found her jacket and her clothes in the dumpster outside of his apartment. The wicked creep took her clothes with him. That's creepy. And I get emotional about this because I have a 34-year-old daughter who's been in some pretty tough scrapes. I love her to death. I do. Do anything for her. You know, she's adopted, but that doesn't matter to me. You know, I follow these court cases. You know, I lean conservative on my politics, so I cover, you know, conservative politics, and I do current events. I did a live over the weekend about the failures of FEMA. Yeah, so much evidence against him is right. And then his lawyer, her assistant, stood up in court in his opening statement and said that there is no evidence against him, that all of the evidence that's going to come in is circumstantial evidence, and that doesn't count. I looked at that dude and said, really? You think circumstantial evidence doesn't count? I know people in jail on just circumstantial murder charges. He got convicted. But they have his DNA. They found her jacket in his dumpster with his blood on it and her blood on it. They have, she scratched his arms and gouged his arms and left a hole in his thumb. You know, right here on his thumb, right here, she put a hole right here. Oops, wrong way. Right there. She put a hole right there with her fingernail. And the cop who questioned him noted all of this. Yeah, we love our kids no matter what. Yeah. But my daughter has turned her life around, and she's an excellent mom. She has 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. She's got a good job. She's a phlebotomist for the University of Florida, and she's going to be getting a job up here by me and moving up her and the kids up here. She wants away from Florida. I moved up here a year and a half ago to get away from all the rude people in Florida. I know there's good people in Florida, but there's so many people that are rude. It's like, why do you got to be rude? That's my rant about that. But back to the YSL case. So I'm wondering what tomorrow is going to be like, because they wanted, Max wanted tonight to finish up with the directed verdict and then discuss it tomorrow outside of the jury. So they're going to go all day tomorrow, finish up jury instructions, I would guess, and then talk about directed verdict. At least that's what I'm thinking. Unless they're going to ask for directed verdict when the jury comes back on Friday. At this point, we can only guess, because this trial has gone on so long and has not been like any other trial that I've ever witnessed. Any other trial that I've witnessed, when a witness on the stand goes off the rails like Dennis did, it's a mistrial. Done. State, you're over with. But I don't know. Whitaker just wanted to get it to the jury. And see, one of the things, see, I was so biased against Glanville that when Whitaker came in, I really had high hopes that she'd do a good job. And here's my view of it. She gave the defendant's lawyers, the defense, the chance to explain things, to give their case, to make their motions. Sometimes they were agreed with, sometimes they were denied, but in the rule of law, no judge is going to give you 100% what you want. You get about 51%, 50 to 51%. So when people were saying, that Whitaker hates Steele and Whitaker hates this one, you have to remember Whitaker and Brian Steele are friends. Brian Steele held a huge fundraiser for Whitaker to help her get elected as a judge. And now that's not bias, or yeah, I guess you would call it bias, because you can't, they work together. Lawyers are friends with judges. Judges are friends with lawyers, etc., both sides. Sometimes the judge is friends with defense lawyers. Sometimes they're friends with prosecutors. And something that I see is that I think Whitaker is eyeing for that open seat on the Supreme Court of Georgia, which to me would be a good thing, because Whitaker knows her law. She knows this law and that law and what applies here and what applies there. She knows that kind of stuff. While we may not like the way she portrays it, you can tell she knows her law. And that's what a Supreme Court justice does. They don't argue cases. They argue appeals, which is a whole different ball of wax. She was an appellate lawyer in the federal system. And she told Love in federal court, you would get 2 hours for each witness. Then Love tried to argue with her that then if they were going to get a time clock, that the defense should get a time clock. And she told her, if I give you 2 hours, I'm not giving them 10 minutes. But another thing I noticed is that Whitaker has really aged just since taking on this case. And you can see that Love has aged. In the 2 years she's been on this case, she has aged a lot. And while there are other lawyers that I think would have been better, like Anna Cross was the best lawyer that the state had. Fannie ran her off. Anna Cross in the Trump trial was on the verge of getting Fannie's testimony or her subpoena quashed, means dismissed. And then Fannie Willis came in and was saying, I'm ready to go. And the judge looked at Anna and said, well, you want to have a minute with your boss there? And then within a week after that whole scenario, Anna Cross resigned. And she was the best lawyer that they had. So I'm wondering how many other good lawyers she ran off. Because if you have a good lawyer at the state, you should do whatever you can to try and keep them, because they usually don't stay there long and they go to private practice and they make buku bucks. And the ones that stay are the ones like Hilton and Love, who are atrocious lawyers. And it blows my mind that Hilton is the professor that teaches how to present evidence at trial. That just blows my mind. How can she be the one that teaches how to present evidence at trial when she does not do anything like what she should? Am I right, Gap Girl? Because that's beyond crazy that she's an actual law professor and she don't know nothing about the law. And she used to make arguments, and Whitaker would tell her, you think that's what that means? I don't mean that. Well, I'm going to get off of here. It's been nice having you on here, Gap Girl. You're always welcome. Invite your friends and come back again. All right? Much love to Kat. She's a great person. Hey, much love, my friend. Much love. I'm not good at this. But what do you think, Kat? Does it amaze you that Hilton is an actual professor that teaches how to present evidence at trial? It does me. I sit here and watch this and it's like, oh, what? You do what? And then you're doing it like this? I've told friends that if she was my law professor, I'd ask for my money back. All right. I'll see you tomorrow, Kat. Much love. Bye for now.